Welcome to the Littleton Board of Health on Wednesday, August 12th, 2020 virtual meeting via Zoom. Just to read before we get started, the town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns related to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to the board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring, but is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of the comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room, which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during the public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you call in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion, we ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute and state their name and address, and after speaking, we require the participant return their microphone back to mute. All right, so we have tonight at 7 o'clock a public hearing regarding 50 Russell Street, a variance request with several solutions. So is Kirk here tonight?
Madam Chair, we do have a hand raised. I don't know if you want to take that now or if you want to wait.
I guess so. I don't know what. Sure.
Madam Chair, Christine Nordhaus wishes to speak.
Hi, Christine Nordhaus, Star Hill. I just was looking at the agenda. I don't see an item for public comment or questions or input, so I just wanted to ask. I see you have a public hearing, so I don't want to delay that, but will there be time for questions after or at some point during tonight's agenda?
Questions regarding what, Christine? The public hearings?
No, just public questions about the Board of Health. Like I had some questions about the Board of Health and schools and stuff, and I just was wondering if you were going to, usually on the agenda, there's a public input time. Okay,
yeah, we can do that during administrative matters towards the end.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you. Thanks.
Yep. All set, Kirk? You've got to unmute.
Sorry about that. Good evening. I'm Kirk Fitzpatrick with Civil Solutions, and I'm here on behalf of Janice Plummer for her property at 50 Russell Street. Let me put the plan up here. Basically, what we have proposed before you is a proposed upgrade for the existing 3-bedroom dwelling. Right now, the house is serviced by 2 cesspools, one right where the proposed jet tank's going to go, and another one further back in the rear yard. Those cesspools are in a state of failure. They're in the groundwater, and they backed up actually last winter when we started this process. So we went out and did some soils testing. We started in the rear yard with test holes 1 and 2. Both had an extremely high water table. We had observed and estimated both at 20 inches. So we tried in the seasonal high water table 36 inches. We were not able to run a percolation test. So we took a soil sample, sent it off to the lab, and actually came back as a silt loam. It looked like a very fine sand in place, but it came back as a class 3, which silt loam is a class 3, which actually bumps the emission rate to the equivalent of 60 minutes per inch. Very restrictive. So our suggestion to our client was to postpone trying to do the design and possibly going back and running a percolation test. So we went back in June and attempted a perk test up in the side yard here. and it was actually still too wet to run the perk test. At this point, we prepared a design based on 60 minutes per inch. In addition to the constraints of the water table, there's also a bordering vegetated wetland across the rear of the property, delineated with flags 1 through 10, and the limit 100-foot buffer zone actually cuts across through the house, and the 50-foot, it bisects the middle of the rear yard. So what we're proposing to do is actually pick up the plumbing as high as we can. It's going to come out and feed a Jet J500 pre-treatment tank, which is basically a package treatment plant. This tank increases the quality of the effluent. It does come with an operation and maintenance package. So it will be monitored and sampled yearly. And then that's going to flow to a 1,000-gallon pump chamber. And then that's going to pump the liquid up to a leach field composed of the geomat. We chose the geomat on this site because it allows us to be only 5 feet off the foundation. So we can keep the system as far from the wetlands as possible. And it also it reduces the amount of fill associated with the system. So this geomat is going to be pressure dosed. So every time the pump kicks on, it'll fill all the laterals in the leach field and spread out the liquid very equally throughout the leaching area. All that being said, it does require some variances. Typically, we would ask for local upgrade approval for the groundwater offset, but where we're proposing to have the system less than 50 feet to wetlands, that becomes a Title V variance instead of local upgrade approval. Number 1 on our variance request is a request from 310 CMR 15.2121A to reduce the requisite groundwater offset from 4 feet to 2 feet with the use of the Jet J500 secondary treatment unit, where the proposed leach field is less than 50 feet to a bordering vegetated wetland. So basically, we're asking for the use of the jet to reduce the groundwater offset where we're still within 50 feet of wetlands. And then we're asking for local upgrade approval, 310 CMR 15451E, to reduce the requisite offset from a leaching area to a bordering vegetated wetland from 50 feet to 39 feet. We're asking for approval from 310 CMR 15.451I to allow the use of a silt analysis where a percolation test could not be performed due to groundwater interference. And the last variance is from Littleton Board Health Regulation 27 to allow fill to meet minimum breakout grading requirements within 10 feet of a property line. And that's over here along Highland Drive. The fill is going to go probably about 3 feet from the lot line, but Highland Drive is actually elevated. So it's actually going to create a natural swale along the side here. You can see this contour. Zoom in a little bit for you. Contour 96 actually cuts back up to the face of the curbing along Highland Drive. So you're going to get a natural swale once this fill is in place to keep the water moving around the system and towards the rear of the property. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions from any of the board members before we ask Jim? Or Jim, do you want to go first?
Looks like Kevin wants to have a question.
Oh, okay, sorry, Kevin.
Sorry, just a quick question. What test hole 3?
Yep.
How did that look? And did the soils look different?
The water table was a little bit deeper, but it had a little bit of better material on top, but it changed to that tighter material. I can zoom in on the test holes here. So we had 40 inches of fill. We had a water table actually just dip into the fill, and then there was a very thin 14-inch layer of the medium sand, and then it changed to the same material that we found consistently in the other 2 test holes. So there was not enough material there to site a system that would be smaller. So this system, the only place to put it is in the rear yard. It physically doesn't fit in that side yard.
Geomat doesn't let you sort of curve it around or reshape it. It has to be kind of a square rectangle.
The geomat with the pressure distribution, it's most effective to be laid level. So the rear yard climbs up. You can see elevation 96 cuts right behind the house. And as you go up the side of the house, it goes to 97. And then elevation 98. If it's the system into the side yard, it would actually be elevated even further. And because of the restricted width between Highland Lane and the edge of the house, the system would actually become kind of long and narrow. It still extend back to the same area. but it would be higher significantly.
I mean, it seems like this fits the best you possibly can.
There's not a lot of options.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is about an advanced system, but we try to keep it as cost effective as we could by using the geomat, which uses the least amount of fill. And because we are less than 50 feet to the wetlands, we're proposing to utilize the jet. So you should get extremely clean liquid coming out of this system.
Pump it back into the toilets and use it. Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
Kurt, can you just repeat what you said about the wetlands? And is this does this have anything to do with CONSCOM at all?
Yes, this will go before conservation. Typically, we come to the Board of Health first, because once it goes to conservation, it'll be done through a notice of intent with another public hearing. So if we had to revise the plan, we'd have to go back before them again. So we come to the Board of Health first, and then go before the conservation next for their approval.
Did Mark Dunn help you with this summer?
He is helping us.
How come he's not at the meeting tonight?
We had actually already did a lot of the field work for this one already in anticipation of doing the design based on the perk that didn't go. So
Tell him I expect him at the next meeting.
he might be on this one.
Hi, Mark.
I did let him know we were on tonight. So
Okay. All right. Mike, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Can you hear me, Lisa?
Yes, Gino, you're on. Do you have any questions?
No, I think it's being presented very well.
All right. And Jim,
this is-
your opinions?
So I think you start from the position that you've got a couple of cesspools that are in the water table. And one of them is at least as close as the edge of this new system's going to be. And then you add the fact that we're putting a treatment tank in it and pumping it and getting the whole system above the water table. I think it's a really good alternative to obviously what's there and about the best you can possibly do and maintain the system on the site. So I don't have any problem with the requested variances.
Great. And any abutters here tonight?
Madam Chair, I see no hands raised.
Okay. So does anybody want to make a motion to accept the variances that Kurt's requested?
Make a motion to accept the variances as presented and approve the plan.
I second it.
Gino seconds it. So we'll do a roll call vote. So Kevin Baker,
Kevin Baker, yes.
Gino,
Gino, yes.
Mike Selden, yes.
and Lisa Flanagan, yes.
great. Thank you.
Nope. Thank you, Kurt. Are you here with us again for Adams?
I think I have the
Okay.
next one also.
All right. So next on the agenda, public hearing of 33 Adams Street, a variance requested from Civil Solutions.
Yep. Let me just bring up the plan here.
This was the one with the revision, right?
I'm having a hard. Bear with me for a second here. I'm having a hard time bringing that plan up. There we go. Again, I'm Kirk Fitzpatrick with Civil Solutions on behalf of the Bozota Bees for their property at 33 Adams Street. This is an existing 3-bedroom dwelling that failed a Title V inspection. Zoom in a little bit. Oops. Sorry. So currently this house is serviced by a cesspool right in the middle of the backyard here. It also has a garage on site with the driveway leading up the side. This is kind of a carport on the side of the garage. The backyard is extremely flat. These are arborvitaes that line the back and then down the side of the property. We went out and conducted test holes 1 and test hole 2. This property also has an extremely high water table at 20 inches. So we were not able to run a perk test. And we took a soil sample, sent it off to the lab, and it came back as a loam, which is a class 2 soil. So this system is designed based on a percolation rate of 30 minutes an inch. So what we're proposing to do is, well, right now the plumbing comes out the back of the house. We're going to change the plumbing, come out the side, and that's going to feed a 1,500-gallon 2-compartment monolithic tank. And that's going to flow to a 1,000-gallon monolithic pump chamber. And then that's going to pump the liquid up to a proposed leaching area composed of the geomat. It's going to be 26 feet long and just over 23 feet wide. So this is because of the water table. If the geomat allows us to be closer to the house, we didn't go as close as we did on the last site just because it's got a bulkhead on the back. But it reduces the grading requirements. So technically the geomat only has to break out grading requirements of 2 feet when it's pressure dosed. We generally provide 5 feet. So this has 5 feet to break out, and then it slopes back down to the existing grade. With that being said, we're requesting several variances. The first is approval sought from Littleton Board of Health to allow for a reduction in the groundwater offset from 4 feet to 2 feet with the use of the geomat leaching system. Number 2, approval sought under 310 CMR 1I to allow the use of a sievance for a percolation test could not be performed due to groundwater interference. Number 3, approval is sought under 310 CMR 15.405 1J to allow less than 12-inch separation between the inlets and outlets of the tank and the high groundwater. So basically, because the groundwater is so high, we are changing the plumbing and raising it up, but the tanks will still be in the groundwater. So we specified monolithic tanks. They will be ordered with boots, and the risers are to be sealed at the tops of the tanks. Number 4, variance is hereby requested from Littleton Board of Health Regulation 27 to allow fill to meet minimum breakout grading requirements within 10 feet of a property line. So we've kind of centered the system in the backyard. We kept it as close to the house as we could without impacting the bulkhead. They are going to be removing this carport, kind of lean-to on the side of the garage and grading towards the garage. Now it's close. The limit of the fill is probably about 7 feet off the lot, both lot lines. Approval is sought under 310 CMR 15451B to reduce the requisite offset from cellar wall to a septic tank and pump chamber from 10 feet to 6 feet. Just a very limited area to site the tanks. We're going to maintain the 10-foot offset from the sideline and maintain the row of arborvitaes and reduce the offset to the house, the tank and the pump chamber. But again, they're monolithic tanks, so they're basically shaped like a bathtub with flat lid as opposed to a seam down the middle. It's virtually impossible for them to leak. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good job.
In the last plan, you had a jet pump instead of the monolithic tanks.
We did. The jet provides treatment. We used the jet on that site because of the wetlands that were there. In conjunction with reducing the offset to the wetlands.
Okay.
The geomat is approved for a reduction in the groundwater offset from 2 feet. It provides advanced treatment, gone through the rigorous testing that the state requires to provide that reduction. So that's what we're utilizing in this case without the jet.
Okay. Kevin, Mike, Gino, any questions?
I'm good.
You all set, Kevin? Okay, and Jim, any comments?
Sure. So the same thing here, less the wetlands. Again, the geomat works pretty well, kind of keeping the fill down. And as Kirk says, the pressure dosing allows them to even keep that fill down a little bit more because you don't need as much fill for the breakout elevation. So again, I think it's about the best you can do in this backyard. If you look up in the corner, the left-hand corner of Kirk's plan, you can see a bunch of contour lines in that corner. That's the other system from the lot next door coming. That's the toe of the slope coming in. So it makes a big difference. And this would probably have to, if you were in kind of crank the height of the system up, it would probably end up having fill across the lot line. So again, I think it's a good compromise. The neighborhood's got town water. I think it really ends up being the best you can do.
And what is it again? It's a failing septic system, or?
It is. It failed a Title V inspection. It's an existing cesspool in the backyard, which is in the water table.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Kirk or Jim?
No, thank you.
Okay. So can I have a motion to accept the variances requested by Civil Solutions for 33 Adams Street?
Make a motion to accept the variance for 33, whatever, Adam Street.
Is there anybody to second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. So we'll do a roll call. So Kevin,
Kevin Baker, yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Gino Ferrone, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Selden, yes.
and Lisa Flanagan, yes. So all set, Kirk. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. So on to the public hearing for Massasoia Trail, Matt Stegel. Is this the one that we continued the last time, Jim, because you needed an updated form, an updated plan?
Correct.
Okay. Matt, whenever you're ready. That's right. Matt couldn't share the plan, I think, last time.
He seems to be muted.
Matt, can you unmute yourself?
It appears that he unfortunately is not connected to audio. And so I don't know if he can hear us, but we cannot hear him.
Can you hear us, Matt? Yes or no? Yeah. No. No.
Stand by. I'm going to
It's switched out.
push it back to.
Jim, while we're waiting, Jim, do you want to give us an update on your, I have just an email from Scott about a COVID update. Do you want to give us any information, Jim, while we're waiting for Matt and Brian?
Sure. So obviously, I'm sure everyone saw the governor's press conference where he kind of rolled back some of the phase 3, step 1 opening, reduced group size, kind of included backyards. It kind of empowered local and state police to do some enforcement. What I will say is the numbers, I guess I'm hoping that was just a kind of temporary blip that it went up. We're back down around 2% again the last few days. Although today's numbers, I was trying to get them before the meeting. As of trying to get onto the meeting, the state hadn't reported what today's numbers were, so not really sure what today did. One of the other things they provided, and I think I sent it to you, Lisa, is a map of the state. So what they've done is they've taken the data, the number of cases per community, figured out the rate per 100,000, color coded them, and what they've done was that they're trying to provide that map to towns or school departments, whatnot, to try to use for decision-making purposes. So, I mean, that map will be updated once a week, like the state numbers will be updated once a week, to allow communities to have a sense of what's happening in their community. And so they've ascribed the number of cases, either a high risk, a moderate risk, or a low risk, and then at the press conference, the governor anticipated, or I think the word was expected, that communities that had like a low risk, essentially low transmission rate in the community, that they were tying it to the opening of schools, that maybe those communities could do an in-person opening. Those that were moderate might use a hybrid model, and those where the number was high would start their school openings with remote. We've been told by the state that school openings and the way they open is a school committee decision. It's not the state's decision, though the school departments do have to submit their plans by Friday to DESE, the Department of Early and Secondary Education. I think the new town report what I did was, instead of a number, provided the link to the state report. The state report that they're now putting out once a week is much more robust. It gives you not only the cumulative numbers that I had been providing, but it gives you kind of a 2-week rolling, some 2-week rolling data, number of cases and averages. So I think that's a much more useful report for people. And I think that's about it for reports.
And Jim, I think you've been in touch with Superintendent Clunchy and maybe Mike Fontanella too.
Mike, that name doesn't sound familiar, but I have talked to Kelly. And again, so there's a bunch of documents, but the two main documents that the schools are using is that initial school opening guidance from the end of September. And then there was the 19-page protocols, essentially, for schools to determine what if at school, what if somebody tests positive, what if somebody has symptoms. And so those are the two main documents we're working with. And so if you look at the initial school guidance, what they kind of recommend schools do is to be in touch with boards of health, particularly for testing and contact tracing purposes. And that protocol, the same thing, consultation with the Board of Health, depending on what kind of situation's happening in the school.
Brian, is Matt ready?
I'm having a small issue where when I try and get him to talk, it tells me his Zoom is outdated. I'm in the process of writing him a message to see if I can get him to update. If I can get him to update his Zoom. Sorry about this, guys.
Madam Chair, just one question.
So I have an email that Scott sent Janet, and it looks like there's some good news that just wanted to give a quick update that NEMA has come through with a good boost of N95 and surgical masks for the department, allowing us to replenish our stock. We are still working to restock other items through various sources. So I guess Scott couldn't be at the meeting tonight, so that was from him. So his update.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
would you be comfortable sending out that report that Jim sent over to you?
Janet, do you have that?
I couldn't hear you, Kevin. What is it you're looking for?
Oh, I was just wondering if Lisa would be comfortable sharing that report that Jim sent over to her.
I think it's public knowledge, but I'm not sure where it is.
So Kevin, the report now, instead of a number, there's a link in there. So if you go to mass.gov and click on the COVID page, scroll down the page past the weekly report, there's a public health weekly report. That's the report now that I link. And in that report, it has all the towns in the Commonwealth. You can scroll down to Littleton and see all the information across.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but it did look good, right, for Littleton?
Yeah. Yep.
You don't want to get too complacent, but.
Nope.
Madam Chair, do you
Yes.
think it might make sense to just put a link to this on our website instead of having waste Jim's time sending out a link that already exists?
Yeah, I think we're supposed to be having it put right to the, is it supposed to go to the website?
So I talked to Joe, and Joe was with this, instead of the report that I had been sending you, I had modified the report to kind of explain, change the format and why the link was better than just the number. And I talked to Joe a little bit, so I'm assuming he put that up on the site. I don't know.
This is Mike. The information about Littleton and all the surrounding communities, the hard data that inform decision-making are also found conveniently in the Boston Globe. There's nothing, shall we say, it's rather accessible.
Oh,
Yeah, it's public knowledge, right?
Yeah, it's all out there. There's nothing here that's, and the key even discusses more lucidly precisely why this number is being used as opposed to, Jim does a great job in the Globe, and the Globe should hire Jim. He'll explain that it has to do with density and spreading. So.
No way, if they hire Jim, then he might not have time for us.
Oh, no, he would definitely, we would employ him and the Globe together to gather and disseminate key information.
Any luck, Brian?
I do have another Matt in here, so I think he's trying to connect with his phone. But while we're waiting, there is a hand raised, Madam Chair. Would you like to address that?
Sure.
Christine Nordhaus has her hand raised, and she can speak now.
Hi, I thought while we were, Christine Nordhaus, Star Hill, while we're waiting and you were just talking about the schools, I thought I would ask my question, if that's okay, Madam Chair?
No, actually, I think maybe if we can, is Richard Watson available to get started? And we'll handle all those questions at the end, Christine?
Okay, sounds good, thanks.
Yeah, because we have a schedule to keep. So is Richard Watson here? And Matt, we can come back to you, maybe work on that, Brian?
Richard is not here, but I just promoted Eric, and he,
Yes.
I believe, is speaking on Richard's behalf.
Hello, Eric.
Yes, Lisa.
How are you?
Good. We got Richard here too.
Oh, okay.
And Sheila.
Uh-oh, uh-oh.
Eric is my fingers to the computer, so.
Nice long fingers.
My
Or
first
something.
Lo-
Anyway, all right, go
lots of
ahead, guys.
heads. Lots of heads, all right.
So recently, I've
You guys have This is a discussion on the deed restriction for 71 Harwood.
yeah,
This is your house?
it's the Kish's houses, yes.
Mhm.
So I recently have put a new addition, a new garage on their house. And since then, they're thinking about finishing up above. And I recently had the assessors come out to see what we actually have on the original floor plan. So I'm going to put up a card that shows the new assessor's card. So the new card, I don't know if you can read that, where it says total rooms. It has 7 rooms and 4 bedrooms. Everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay, so the only thing I want to push back on that is I'll show you the next diagram of their existing upstairs. So they've got 4 rooms upstairs. One of them is a closet. It's a good sized closet, but it's under 70 square feet. And the ceiling height is under 7 feet. And if you look in the state building code, which I'll put this up, it shows any room that's under 70 square feet and under 7 feet in height is not considered a habitable room. So my position is with the new card, and the assessors took notes on this room also, did some measurements with the, so my position is that with this room being this size, I believe they have 6 rooms in the house. And with the addition of the 3 rooms that I would like to put up above the garage, you want to show that, Eric? The 3 rooms I want to put up above the garage would get me to 9, which I believe I'd fall under the system, the 4-bedroom system. I'd like to have your input on what I just showed you.
So you're saying that the closet's been called a room before?
Yes, the assessor said, well, we call it a room, no matter what. And then, because that's what, obviously, when you assess it for a bedroom, you get more money. But as far as the state building code is considered, it's not a bedroom.
So that will bring you to 6 rooms and then plus 3 over the garage?
Yeah, would get me to 9.
So we divide that by 2, right?
Oh,
And then round up or round down?
Round down.
So, and so is your, what's the septic system for?
It's a 4-bedroom. Updated back in '98.
All right, anybody have any questions?
Does the room does the room that is considered to be that you're considered to be a closet because of its dimension, does it have a closet inside of it?
No, it does not.
Okay, thanks.
Kevin?
Do you have any pictures?
Sorry?
Do you have any pictures?
Yeah, we can go back to that. They didn't have any original sketch at the assessor's office because the age of the house. So I drew this up, and when the assessors were here, she took a drawing back to the office, and she also looked at it here and she has a copy of this also.
And, Jim, do you have any questions at all?
Yeah, we're always kind of trying to figure out what to call these things. And as I talked to Rich, the code talks about 70 square feet for a bedroom, but then the definition, when you get over 8 rooms, says you add up all the rooms in the house, divide by 2 and round down. So, I mean, the system is designed for a 4-bedroom. If you look at the proposed rooms over the garage, kitchen, I'm not even sure what else is in there. Maybe Rich, you can turn back to it. It kind of looks like an accessory unit. And again, I don't necessarily have a problem with that as long as the system meets the code. But I'm not, one of the differences would be whether it has a multi-compartment 1,500 gallon tank. That's what you'd need for other than a single family house. So, you could quibble over bedrooms. My thought is a deed restriction and that this is not to be an accessory unit isn't such a bad thing. If they want to make it an accessory unit, they'd have to update the tank and make sure it met Title V. As I told Rich, I don't want what you're looking at as far as public records. I don't want there to be any question about what anybody who opens this file and says, all right, you added 3 rooms, it had 7 rooms, that should be 10, it should be a 5-bedroom system. And that's what it would look like on paper. So what we're trying to do is just make sure that the public records, yours, the assessors, everything kind of matches up so nobody has any question on process and what exists there.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Would it be possible to get the public record as is currently changed to 7 rooms, just so there's no question down the line?
It is changed to 7 rooms.
Oh, it's changed now.
Yeah, they came through and assessed it a couple weeks ago.
Good. Yeah, it's not updated yet, but okay.
Yeah.
And I guess that my question was changing that closet, making it a little smaller so it's obviously a closet. But if they've already assessed it as 7 rooms, then that's not anything you have to worry about.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I make a motion to, is this a discussion? Or just a?
This is a discussion though, Kevin. So, Janet, any advice? What do we?
And normally on the deed restrictions, if your deed restriction policy, I believe states if it's like 1 room over, I can sign off out on the permit. This is just a little different in the way it's, what the rooms are over the garage, that I felt the board should look at this as part of that. So again, if you wanted to grant a deed restriction to restrict it to 4, and that this space over the garage wouldn't be an in-law and accessory unit, unless the septic system was upgraded so it met that kind of requirement. I don't see an issue with that.
So moved.
All right, do we need to take a roll call for that?
Need a second.
Second, yep. So anybody want to second what Kevin's motion?
Second. I second.
Motion, 1 second, Gino. Kevin's motion was to accept it as a 4-bedroom, but not an accessory dwelling over the garage on the 2nd floor.
Yeah, 4-bedroom deed restriction, no accessory dwelling.
Yep. So Gino seconds,
I second. Gino second.
right? So take a roll call. So Kevin,
Baker, yes.
Gino?
Gino Perloni, second. Yes.
Yes. Mike Zeldin?
Mike Zeldin, yes.
And Lisa Flanagan, yes.
My neighbor. Good job.
Now he tells us.
Yeah, that's a conflict, you know. I don't know.
Oh, they're all over the place.
Okay,
You jealous, Mike?
Not at all. I'm glad you are where you are.
Hey, I got nice neighbors, okay, Mike?
We do too.
all right, thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Matt, any luck?
Hi, yes. Sorry about that. Okay, so Matt Stegel from Lantec, representing James Williamson for his lot on Massasoia Trail. I believe at the last meeting, the plan hadn't been shared, and I don't think Jim had had a chance to review it yet. I know Jim had. We got more copies over to Jim, and I know that he has reviewed the plan, and I have pulling it up now. Okay, so here we have the proposed 3-bedroom dwelling. We designed a Presby system in the backyard, and then with the reserve area just behind that primary system. And the variance request is for the retaining wall that extends along the western or eastern and southern property lines. Both of those, the wall along both property lines is going to be approximately 8 feet from the property line. So we're asking for a variance for fill within 10 feet of the property lines. And I know at the last hearing, there was question about Jim was concerned about the reserve area and whether it was buildable. And I know that he sent an email to me and Matt Waterman at Lantec saying that those concerns were taken care of, but I wasn't sure if there was the board has any questions or if Jim has any other comments.
Matt, what is the pink wall versus the bluish wall?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. One of Jim's comments was just how we were going to mitigate any stormwater from reaching the abutting properties, and I just drew in the PDF just some conceptual infiltration trenches.
Okay.
Just one trench along the bottom of the retaining wall, and then if there was concern of runoff going over to the property at 23 Neshoba Trail, we could also put an infiltration trench along that property line if that was necessary.
And I guess I probably jumped the gun. Any abutters here tonight?
Nice job.
Brian?
Madam Chair, I see no hands raised.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have comments, questions for Matt?
Did a good job.
Kevin has his hand raised, Lisa.
Go ahead, Kevin. Sorry, I don't see it on the full on the screen.
What number Massasoit is this?
The property doesn't have a number. It's on the assessor's records. It's just called Massasoia Trail. I know it's map 47, lot 67, but right now it doesn't have a numerical address as far as I could tell, looking through the records online. And I don't think the certified abutters list didn't show an address either.
What does the post office think it is?
Oh, there's the lot is currently vacant, so there's no house on the lot right now.
So there's 8.
So I would assume there's no mail getting delivered.
So the post office will decide what the address is.
No.
Just curious, what's on the lot next door? 66.
Oh, boy.
66 is also a vacant lot. And then on the other side of that, I believe the Williamsons own the house that's on the other side of that of parcel 66, or they may have sold that house recently, but they did previously own it.
Is 66 buildable?
I honestly am not. I don't offhand. I don't remember what the width of the lot is.
75 feet by 100.
Yeah,
Then given just by the dimensions, then yes, it might be buildable. We haven't looked into doing anything with that lot with the client or with the owner.
No, I'm just curious as to, if it's the same owner, why is all this energy being put into this gigantic wall when you could easily get a grading easement and make it look a lot better?
That is a valid point. We hadn't considered. I'm not sure what his intent is with that property, but that is something that could be discussed with the owner. Yeah, as far as I know, I just know that he wanted to try and keep this as a standalone lot. Whether or not having a grading easement would affect any, I'm not sure if he has future plans for that lot or what the intent is, but that is something that could be discussed.
Thank you.
Kim, do you have any comments?
So I don't recall having done soil testing on the abutting lot. One of the concerns I had with this site here is this lot all kind of slopes to the right-hand bottom corner. You can see the grading kind of goes off to the bottom. And so I wanted to make sure that if you're going to build this entire site up and make some of it, like the roof and driveways, impervious, that you're able to catch the surface runoff. So I did ask them to put the stone infiltration trenches with enough of those trenches, so hopefully it doesn't any of the water doesn't run off onto that corner and onto the abutting lots. These small lots generally have a higher water table. It wasn't a bad perk rate, but obviously you have what you have to work with. So retaining walls they're allowed by Title V. Owners can try to get a system to work using the retaining walls.
No, I get it.
So does anybody want to make a motion on this, or I know I understand what you're saying, Kevin. It's like, but there's a possibility that they might be trying to sell this so that they can do something.
Jim, have you tested the lot next door? You don't recall, or?
I don't recall having done testing on that. So there's this lot here, and then kind of kitty corner. I don't know if you can see on Matt's screen is showing kind of to the southeast. There's another Williamson lot there. That one right there. That just got recently built. I believe that's the other lot.
Oh, Samoset.
Yep.
Right,
So
right.
that one was on Samoset. So you saw that one 2 years ago, maybe?
Right.
And it looks similar. Actually, it has more retaining wall than this one will. The benefit of this one, the lot goes uphill a little bit, so they need a retaining wall on the western side of the lot, if you will.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion to accept the plans for Massasoia Trail, map 47, lot 67?
I would make a motion to approve it as long as the owner has a chance to take a look at, have a little foresight, and take a look at what they want to do with 66 and have the option to eliminate that side of the retaining wall with Jim's approval with a grading easement.
I think that makes a little bit of sense. So what do you think, Matt? Are they ready to start? I mean, are they waiting for this to do the next one, or is there any possibility that they're going to develop that other lot?
I honestly
Just give
am
me the
not.
option.
I honestly am not aware if they are or aren't trying to develop that lot.
Someday it'll happen. I just think they should have the option if they decide. That's
yeah, which is understandable.
Jim. Would you be okay with that?
So just so I can understand it, you want them to have the discussion, but if the owner decides he'd rather not encumber that vacant lot, you're okay with the retaining wall? Is that my understanding of what you're saying?
Well, there's nothing we can really do about it.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand. No, I mean, the beauty would be is if you're building both these lots at the same time and you could blend the fill.
Right.
I mean, probably the best example of that is the lots they did on Lincoln and I'm losing the other lot where they took down a bunch of old houses, built a bunch of new houses, but they built them all Dahlia, so they could grade other lots.
Right.
Yeah. That allowed them to grade the lots appropriately. When you do a one-off, it makes a little different. So, if they were designing them at the same time, it makes perfect sense to do the grading between them. But
Right.
I just don't know what the owner's plans are.
Yeah, shared system or something. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I assume this is town water?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So I'll continue with that motion.
Is there a second?
I second. Gino Faralloni second.
Okay, so we'll take a vote. Roll call. Kevin Baker.
Kevin Baker, yes.
Gino.
Gino, yes.
Mike.
Mike Selden, yes.
Lisa Flanagan, yes.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. So next we have a discussion on the well regulations. So I know that was Louise's little project, but she's not here tonight. But I think Ivan and Colby are going to be here to talk a little bit about that. Corey. Colby. Sorry, Corey.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I see Ivan's on too. I think he might have something to say first.
I can see you though. That's okay.
Oh, hold on. I'll turn my video on.
Turn your video on.
There we go. It's a little bit.
Oh,
the light right
jeez.
behind me. How's that?
I'm not
Thank
the only
you.
one having a problem.
Purple.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the board tonight for inviting us to discuss again, to continue the discussion on private wells. We are in receipt of some modifications to your chapter 226, I believe it is, well regulations. And I know in our last meeting we talked about you were going to reach out to town council regarding some inquiries on what authority and what could be put into regulations. I'm wondering have you had any feedback yet?
Unfortunately, I have not. I have put in multiple requests as recently as yesterday, and I have not heard back from them, unfortunately. It does sometimes take a while.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. So we had some input that Corey's going to go over regarding what we received, and I'll pass it off to Corey and we can start the discussion.
Sure. Yeah, so we took a look through what you sent over. Looked like a working draft document. I guess my main thought was just maybe one thing to consider would be, rather than trying to sort of fit the water commissioner's water use restriction regulation into the Board of Health regulations, it might be simpler to just have, maybe you have your own section called water use restriction regulation, but it might be just a simple statement along the lines of a simple majority vote by the Littleton Board of Health will have the effect of extending the applicability of the Littleton Board of Water Commissioners water use restriction regulation to private well owners, but with the enforcement responsibility on those private well owners being delegated to the health agent. Something simple like that, where it's referring to our regulation so that it has the same effect, but since private wells are under the purview of the Board of Health, it gives you the authority to take that vote and in the event of a drought or a declaration of a state of water supply emergency. So that was sort of our main thought on the draft that you sent over there. I don't know if any of you have any thoughts on that.
Anybody? Kevin?
Do you have a map that shows zone 1 and zone 2 in relation to these private wells?
Yeah, I don't have it handy right now, but I could send you that. Yep. There's about 500 or so private wells in Littleton, and they're pretty spread all over the place. I mean, they're typically in the more remote areas, obviously, or just newer developments that didn't happen to connect to the water distribution system.
Do you know if there are grants available for folks to connect to town water? State grants?
Not nowadays. That was a thing 30, 40 years ago. That was a big thing, but nowadays that money's all pretty much dried up.
Yeah.
In most cases anyways.
Can we fit it in the CARES Act, Jim?
Nope.
No, you don't want to go near. Okay. Corey, I have a question, Corey,
Sure.
and maybe you and I can explain. Give me a scenario. I want to understand what you're basically proposing is basically a practical matter of who has jurisdiction and who can basically provide, shall we say, to regulate to the extent that it can. So I want to see what was your thinking about in terms of a specific scenario where a well owner and user, okay, either wants to do something with a current well or decides to put in, or someone decides to put in a new well. So what I'm trying to understand is what's the practical input, the practical consequence of what you're proposing for jurisdictional, between what you're trying to achieve and what our achievement is, which is a little different.
Yeah, well, I think for the purposes of this discussion, I think we're only talking about water bans, right? So right now, the Board of Water Commissioners is authorized to institute a water ban, or we call it a state of water supply conservation. That only applies to users of the public water system. It doesn't apply to private well owners, and so they're allowed to continue to irrigate their lawns however they see fit. And the Board of Water Commissioners has no authority over private well owners. There's nothing we can do about that. Whereas the Board of Health does have authority over private wells. And so your board has the ability to implement a water use restriction regulation. And we just thought to make it easier, you might want to just refer to ours so that it's sort of in sync with whatever we're doing.
Okay. I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm trying to understand the thinking. Okay.
Sure.
So the reasons that the water commission will decide to put a ban on has to do with supply versus what you've got available. It's supply.
Yeah.
Right.
And Kevin, and both you and Lisa have a history, and Gino have a history with the Board of Health. Our justification for putting a water ban in, okay, I think it's a great idea that it gets hooked into the practical matter that we need to conserve water. Our justification would have to be along health lines. We couldn't simply say, oh, the volume of water is too low, stop using your well. I did speak to a bunch of attorneys in a different place for a different circumstance. And if there's somebody out there looking for the hole. So if the Board of Health has to be able to justify why they're instituting a water ban, other than the fact justifiably that we have a difficulty with water supply. Okay. It's the hell. Now we can make one up and we can, say, look, if the water level goes good, it's a threat to the whole community. They don't have enough to drink. I mean, the list is legion. But I just want to understand what the thinking is in providing that to make sure that we can actually stay in sync and it doesn't have a hole drilled to it for agricultural use or whatever. See where I'm heading? I mean, if we don't have to solve it tonight. It's something that that I don't want to put a hole into the water ban issue. Okay, that's my concern is that we're even though we have the best efforts to try to do a coordination, there's a hole in the connection. Unless we do add something else where we consider a water shortage to be a threat to community health.
Well, it's a shortage potentially of public consumption of water, right? And that's a public health issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just that I'm asking the question. That's why I put it to Kevin and Lisa and Gino. Do you think we ought to be adding, I hate regulations, verbiage. Do you think we should be in a position where we include some language that allows us to define the area of water consumption by humans to be one of the concerns of human health? Just because common sense says it is, doesn't mean that lawyers do.
No, I hear what you're saying, Mike. Yeah. You want to define it so that you can point back to a justification.
Yeah, I don't want someone to drive a hole through this and then the whole thing collapses.
Right. Yep.
Kevin?
Madam Chair, I think if we define the difference between dug wells and drilled wells, to the extent that, the drilled wells are part of our drinking water supply, if they are in a certain area of the aquifer, where dug wells would be more of an irrigation type or non-potable type of water. In addition to that, I think we just need to dig into the different aquifer zones, and it's my understanding that some zones are considered state-owned while others are considered town. And I don't know, I just think we should clarify, what zones we're talking about, where these specific wells are, and call that out. But I wouldn't have a problem, in times of drought, classified by the state and the DEP to ban all to ban lawn watering from drilled wells outside of or inside of the zones that are controlled or regulated by the town of Littleton.
Yeah, so all of the zones you mentioned are, none of it's owned by the state. It's just there's certain state regulations that apply to some of those zones, of course, like the Zone 1 and the Zone 2 primarily.
Yeah, so Zone 1 is state regulated. You have to educate me. I don't.
Sure. Yeah, so the Zone 1 is the 400-foot radius around a public water supply well. And then the Zone 2 is the area of the aquifer that well draws water from, essentially. And then beyond that, there's a Zone 3 that you don't hear much about, and that's essentially the whole watershed that the well is within. But
A suggestion there. This is Gino. I understand the best thing to do is all those people that own a well, which is 500, you claimed it, they're about 500, am I correct?
yeah, about that.
They should have the regulation. I was very lucky to get the regulation, and there's about like 12 pages. If the person that owns the well read it, it's just like reading a little book. 12
Good.
pages. They have an idea what they should do or not to do. Sometimes they run out of water. They can't possibly dig another well because you have to be 100 feet, 50. All depends on what the regulation qualify. The Board of Health can say, okay, you don't have water in that particular area. The land is bigger. You have to be 100 feet. Sometimes we give them the variance. There is something very important for the individual that owns a well. If you read the regulation, and they will explain a lot. And also that if there is a problem, the problem would be if we have no rain coming down, the town says, okay, you don't use the water, but you only use it twice a day. If you want to wash your clothing and so forth. But the state, and according to the regulation, they can fine $500 a day. So they should be allowed to have these regulations. Is there anything you people can do on the water department to send these regulations to each individual person that owns a well in his residency?
I think part of this is education, and we feel that our regulations and our when there's a violation, we don't fine the first violation. It's about educating the public.
That's
So
true.
I agree with you, Gino. This is going to be if regulations are enacted, we need to educate those private well owners as to exactly what potentially can happen if the state issues a drought, that it does affect them now. I agree with you. And that's something that I think we can help with.
Yes, you can.
You know, we like to educate every year. So I think that's something we can help with.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm not trying to say, hey, you're going to be fined $500 a day. They should understand that. They should understand. The more they understand by reading, the better it is, not only for them, but for us. We don't want to penalize anybody.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's water. They need water. Unfortunately, the reason they have the well, in some cases, they say, well, I have the well. I got plenty of water. The question is sometimes it could be contaminated. They should be able to understand they have to have the water tested. I filed a suggestion to an individual that I went to their house and I asked for a glass of water. You know what the lady said to me? I'm sorry, Gino, the water is contaminated. We buy regular water. I said, why don't you have a check? Have a check, and then you can take care of it. Or either that, have the town provide town water.
All right,
A lot of people, they're very ignorant, not because they're ignorant, because they don't understand.
You know what, Kevin, you had a question, and then we're gonna,
Yeah, just really quick. I'm just looking at the map. Is the water department open to waiving connection fees for folks that are in close proximity to town water if they have, their own excavator on site and plumber to do the interior?
I'll leave that one to you, Evan.
Yeah, Kevin, we run lean every year, and we're budget issues every year. So connection fees are critical to our budget. So I mean, that's something we can discuss as a board, but I can't commit that we would do something like that at this point.
Oh, I don't want you to commit. I was just wondering if you're open to that conversation.
Well, yeah, we're always open to the conversation. Absolutely. We're always open to the conversation, but to understand the water department runs lean every year.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'll do.
Jim, do you have any comments at all?
Sure. So I think before you do anything with this, it's really important to get town council's input. And here's why. Where the water department actually provides the water to town citizens, they actually have that ability, and people perceive it's the water they're getting from the department, so they regulate whether you get it or not and how you can use it. With private wells, there's a perception that it's their well, it's their water, they're taking it, and though the board does regulate how wells are constructed and where they're installed and what kinds of water testing, we don't regulate them in the sense like the water department regulates it. So again, I think it's really important the town council kind of pipe in about what the board's authority is to do this kind of regulation on private wells. Now, saying that and kind of picking up on other people's comments, there is another document from DEP that talks about water bans that also includes, I guess the sample bylaw that kind of includes private wells. And I don't know if that's supposed to be like a town bylaw on that, but to me, that would be probably the more appropriate way to do this, is to put a town bylaw that way there it's getting the broadest review of the townspeople, so everyone's kind of in on this. They know that it's not just the Board of Health through their regulations trying to regulate the well. This is a town bylaw, and if water customers are kind of held to this, then people on private wells are held to this too. To me, that would be the better way to do that. Where I see the Board of Health being able to try to kind of work around the edges on this is things like irrigation wells. Maybe as you're revising your regulations, you're looking at prohibition or kind of strictly curtailing the installation of irrigation wells. So that's kind of my thoughts on this.
Okay. Any other comments? I think what's the next thing to do is still hear from town council, right?
Yeah, I think make sure that Jim's comments are incorporated and we think about the future of having public forums, perhaps, so we can start, as it were, providing the education about where we're heading and why.
Okay,
And we're open, if there's a call or a conference call with town council, we're open to attend that call if you desire.
Thank you.
Yep.
great, thank you. Janet, did you have something to say? I think I saw you come on and off again.
No, I'll see if I can get some help from town administrator in connecting with, town council, since I don't seem to be having a whole lot of luck.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Janet, should we put the well regulations on the next agenda too? When Louise can be here, we can talk.
Absolutely.
Connected
Yep.
with Harrington. You guys willing to come back in 2 weeks?
Wouldn't miss it.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so on to some administrative matters.
Administrator matter.
So we had a letter from a citizen regarding our reorganization of the board and how the reorganization was not on the agenda that night. So shall I read the letter, Janet?
That's fine. You can read the letter.
Okay. So, well, actually, there was a form filled out about a violation of the open meeting law because of that, the reorganization of the board without it being on the agenda. So the form, Janet, I don't know, was that public knowledge? Because I see it, but I didn't print it up or anything like that.
But as a matter of record, that is public.
Yeah, the gist of the complaint was that it was, the board was reorganized and it was not on the agenda. So this is a response that Janet and Diane Crory came up with. So it says to Ms. Katie Curran, Office of the Attorney General, based on the complaint that the board failed to post on the July 8th, 2020 meeting agenda that they would be voting to reorganize positions, the board chose to schedule a revote. It is posted on the agenda for August 12th, 2020 meeting. We believe these actions corrected any perceived wrongdoing on the part of the board. Respectfully, the Littleton Board of Health. So, and I think just to make sure.
So you would, if everybody agrees with that drafted letter, you need to actually vote for me to send that as a response to both Ms. Curran and the Attorney General.
Okay. The only thing is with, I don't want there to be any other violation perceived. I would like to wait on this until we have a full board, just to make sure that our I's are and T's are dotted and dash, whatever you want to call it.
Well, you're going to vote on the letter because I'm going to send that out. We have a certain timeline to respond to that, but town clerk would like you to refrain from re-voting until you have a full board attendance.
So then, where the letter says it's posted on the agenda for August 12th, should we change that date? Because that's
We'll just add that the vote was not taken on the 12th because we did not have a full board in attendance. And it will be continued on recurring agendas until there is a full board, because there could be an absence next board meeting as well.
Next week.
And that'll cover us, right?
Yep, that more than covers it. This actually was not a truly, according to town clerk, there were a couple of areas as to why this complaint does not really fall under, but we're just going to go above and beyond and overextend ourselves and make sure that there is no perceived notion that the board is not acting above board.
Yeah, it's a pretty flawed submission, but I think Janet's got the right spirit. I think that if we all got together and did what we have to do at the next meeting, we can basically move on. I agree, yeah.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that or make a motion or first approve the letter? Yes, but do we have to change the date?
Yes, you have to.
We're just going to say that we'll just, whoever makes the motion, just say we're going to add a sentence saying that the vote was not made because you don't have a full board, and it'll continue until you do have a full board.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion to that?
We'll make a motion to continue for 2 weeks for the next board meeting for the reorganization.
Anybody second?
No, that's not what we're voting. We're voting.
All
right. Excuse me.
Never done this before.
Sorry, you're gonna vote to approve that a letter is going to be sent to the complainant and to the Attorney General with the addition of a continuation until next meeting.
Make a motion to continue according to the Attorney General.
Yeah, wait, I have a question to ask. I'm sorry, because this actual motion has 2 parts. I just want to make sure we understand what we're doing. If there's an issue with the complaint, however justified, why are we communicating immediately to the Attorney General?
Because the complainant, rather than following the protocol of submitting the complaint to the chairperson and giving time for the board to
full board
remedy the issue, the person actually sent the complaint to the Attorney General directly. So the protocol was not followed accurately, and it also was not during the timeline that it needed to be submitted. But again, in talking with town clerk, she said she suggested that we just respond in such a way that there's no perceived image of the board as being underhanded or Lisa, Kevin has a question.
I would just say that since Louise is not here and she should have a say in this, and that also I'd like to read the letter that we're voting on approving before we approve it, if we approve it.
I guess, Janet, is there any rush to respond to complaints?
No.
What do we have?
I'm sorry?
How long, what's the deadline?
Well, we haven't heard from the Attorney General. Typically, they may look at this and say it's not following protocol, so they're just going to throw it out. Town clerk was just trying to get us to simultaneously
proactive, right? I get it.
Be proactive, but until we hear from Attorney General, there isn't anything that we're mandated to do.
Lisa?
Yes, Jim.
So, it's been my experience the handful of times I've seen this happen is I think the Attorney General office just wants to know that boards realize that these regulations exist. And I think they use complaints like this as more of an educational thing. So I think the proactive thing is good. Whether you vote on at the next meeting, maybe attach whatever your response is going to be to the complaint and send it in. Then the Attorney General office knows that it's something that you're aware of and you've been educated on if that's the case. So I think they always approach these violations, particularly something like this where, probably just an oversight as to this needed to be specifically called out on the agenda is just more of a learning process for a board.
So should we continue everything, including the letter, to the next full board meeting? Is that what
I'm
we're all-
sorry, I was frozen and I didn't, I couldn't hear the very end of Jim. My whole screen froze.
So should we continue, it gives Kevin a chance to read the letter, we can reword it and just agree on sending it out when we meet again in 2 weeks?
That's fine. We can work it that way. That's fine.
Okay.
Madam Chair, as you're discussing this, there is a hand raised in the audience if you want to take it.
Okay, sure.
It's me again, Christine. I'm just waiting my turn. I just didn't want you to forget about me, but I'm glad you brought up the general thing because I was going to write a letter to the Attorney General about that as well. So there's a timeline for people to complain about open meeting violations. How long is that timeline?
According to town clerk, you are supposed to submit the complaint to the chairperson within 30 days of the
that's good.
action.
Yeah.
And only go to the Attorney General if the chairperson does not
respond,
solve the issue to your satisfaction.
Excellent. That's great to know. And then my hand was up about to ask my school question, so I can wait. I'm just holding it up so you guys don't forget about me is all.
Nope, we haven't forgotten about you.
Thank you.
So we're going to just continue everything, Janet? The discussion on the letter and...
Yep, that's fine.
And can we'll do a vote then also too? Can we do that at the same time as sending in the letter?
Next week, I mean, next meeting.
Next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
So you don't need a motion there, right?
Not right now.
Just going to wait until next, the next meeting. We'll just add that on.
In
Add
2
that-
weeks.
Add that to administrative matters?
Yes.
Okay. I know we are behind one meeting minute also, but I know Janet's been really busy and she only has 18 hours a week to work with us. So with dealing with letters from attorney generals and things like that, I'm sure that takes up a lot of your time, Janet. So we'll do 2 meeting minutes next time.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Kevin?
It's more for Brian. Brian, are you there?
Yep.
What type of Zoom account do we have, and are you able to hit the transcribe button on the video after it's over, after it's complete?
We did get into that with Kirby,
Brian.
but I'll let Brian, sorry.
Yeah, we did look into that. Currently, our recordings are stored on a personal town server, and they're made to the public on the LCTV On Demand website. We can look into exploring alternatives, and I can bring that up to Kirby and other people, but currently there is no transcription service.
So right
And I believe when I looked into it with Kirby, there was an expense to it, so that he said it was not something that was possible.
It's probably less than paying you. It takes longer.
Sorry?
It's probably costs less than paying you to, do all the sweat equity there and doing the minutes. Yeah, I guess I'll look into it and see what the solution is. So I mean, this is a regular Zoom account, right? Just the video, you just download it after it's over.
This is a little bit more complicated than a normal Zoom account. It is an enterprise webinar. So there are a couple extra fees that they throw in because, of course, it's a business. But
You have to go to WebEx if you want get what you're after. I don't think WebEx has a very nice system for doing what you want to do. They also charge an arm and a leg for it.
Don't you have one of those accounts, Mike?
Not anymore.
All right. So any other questions, administrative matters, member comments at all?
There's a hand.
Yeah, I was going to say, Madam Chair, there's a hand raised.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Matthew Nordhaus, Star Hill. I want to comment on the transcription. there are several very good artificial intelligence transcription services, which you can basically feed in a recording and it will come out with a transcription that's 99% accurate. The price is nominal. It's like $20 a month typically. And it still requires some hand editing, but it's going to be much quicker and I would assume less expensive than having a human do it. I've used them on several occasions at work and they're quite good. That's all.
What are they called?
The one that I've used is called Otter.ai, but when doing research, I found literally dozens of the same. I'm sure they're all using the same, analytic engine or whatever it is that is analyzing the audio and spitting out a language.
Okay.
I'd be happy to provide you with a list of them. It would be easy to do. So.
Are you guys using it for Board of Selectmen at all?
We are not for that, but I've used it. I've used it at my day job.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Are the Board of Selectmen going to do that? Are they going
I don't know. We talked about it at the last meeting, but I can't remember what we decided not to do it for a reason, and I can't remember what it was. I'll ask the other board members.
Okay. Anybody else? Any questions, comments?
I thought there was a hand up earlier about schools.
Yeah, that's Christine Nordhaus. I was just wondering if anybody else had any questions, and then we'll go on to the school.
Okay.
All right, Christine.
Hi. So sorry for all the hand raising. Thank you, Christine Nordhaus, Star Hill. My question is, when is there going to be a public forum, with the Board of Health and the school committee for people to sort of speak up? I mean, this is a constant conversation around town and online. And, I know that Jim and if I heard correctly, Jim and Kelly Clenchy have been talking, but, we didn't elect them. They work for us. We elected you guys, and we want the Board of Health and the school committee to have a joint public forum for the people of Littleton to hear what's going on and to chime in. So I don't see anything on either your agenda or the school committee agenda coming up. I'm wondering if you have some plans that you can share. I mean, we're in mid-August right now.
Jim, maybe you can speak to that at all?
I'm asking for the Board of Health to speak to this. I think Jim is wonderful and we're so fortunate to have him. I want my elected officials to answer this, please. Please, the Board of Health, you gotta help the town out here.
First of all, I think that the school committee has been doing a great job.
Me too.
I've spoken with Mike Fontanella, who does want to have a meeting with Board of Health, but time constraints has been difficult to do. So I'm kind of waiting for Mike to get in touch with us. I've spoken to him and I missed a text from him, so he has my email address. So I think the school committee has until Friday to get their plans in and
to, if I may, into the Board of Health. I mean,
I think there's a misunderstanding here that the schools respond to basically the Commonwealth school.
Okay, with respect, I'm not confused. I elected the Board of Health and the school committee to represent my interests, as did the rest of the people in Littleton, and have not been allowed a public forum to talk to our elected representatives in an open meeting. When is that going to happen? I mean, what's more important than this, with all due respect? I mean, missed text and can't get a hold of Mike Fontanella. This is really important stuff.
It is as a member of the Board of Health, I sympathize, and I can just tell you that there is a major effort underway to meet with the schools and the school committee for a very public forum or very public discussion about what plan the schools have put together in order to implement the state's requirements for safe attendance.
Excellent.
Or hybrid, or what the school's plans are.
Excellent.
Okay, so just today, the state, just to understand how fluid the situation is, until today, there was no specific guidance on, shall we say, the parameters of risk mitigation until today, when the governor basically released the ratings, or basically provided the, shall we say, the infection rate.
Yeah.
For various towns. That's what they're using as, now that's new for the schools. They haven't seen this before. They haven't been told this before. They haven't been given this guidance before. Now, whether or not the statement or the desire on the part of the governor or his team of health experts who suggest that schools can be open and attended for those towns that basically have a very low infection rate, it is not clear to me or anyone else to what extent the towns are required to adhere to this. This may be simply guidance, and that's one of the reasons that we're all looking for a public forum. But it's only today that this was released.
Yeah.
And the deadline for the submission of the plan to the state by the schools is, I believe, on Friday. Jim, is that correct?
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Yes, so they need to submit their plans on Friday. So just in our public health calls, it was made pretty clear to us that the decision on how schools are going to open rests with the school committee, not with the state. They need to send their plans to DESE so DESE knows what they're doing, but it's the local school committees that make this decision. And as I had mentioned to the board earlier in the meeting, there are some very small components of those initial guidances and the protocols that were sent out that involve the Board of Health. But it's not the Board of Health say, it's the Board of Health's role is in consultation with the school department.
Yeah, I understand that, and thank you very much, Jim. I was thinking, when are we going to hear what the Board of Health has to say to the school committee in advising them on whether or not it's healthy to follow this new guidance or go our own way, and when are the people going to have a say in that as well? That was really my question.
Okay. Jim, do you have a response to that?
Again, I haven't seen the school's plan at this point here. I'm sure they're still working on it because they need to meet that deadline. I don't know that the board could comment on anything until they actually saw a plan. And again, I think the Department of Early and Secondary Education put together that guidance with the American Academy of Pediatrics and other health advisors, all of which have much higher credentials than I do. And so, this is the documents that we're looking at to try to advise. And this is the documents the schools are looking to try to determine whether it's safe to open or not.
Okay, great. Thanks for your comment, Christine. All right. Any other questions at all? Anybody else have their hands raised?
I just have one last comment, if that's all right.
Sure.
My concern with the whole school reopening, school committee, Board of Health situation is obviously public health is number one in our world, and we're most concerned about that. But I mean, let's talk about liability for a minute, and what happens if a kid dies or a teacher dies? They're going to say, well, why didn't the Board of Health do anything? What, they even weigh in? So I just think we need to cover ourselves and have that conversation. So That's it.
Okay. All set, guys. So we're going to reconvene the next meeting. And as soon as we hear from Mike about a joint meeting, we'll get back to you. We'll get an email out. He talked about trying to make a non-quorum small meeting before their meeting on Thursday, but with our meeting on Wednesday, I talked to him on Monday, it just is probably not going to happen before their meeting. And like Jim said, they don't have, sorry?
You should do an opinion as a, board. Based on whatever plans come out with.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So next meeting, Janet, the date is...
I don't have a calendar in front of me.
August 26th. August 26th.
Yeah, 26th.
7 o'clock Zoom, and if we'll, when I'll get back in touch with Mike and try and firm up a date and hopefully they can hear our opinions.
Just one opinion. Board of Health.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Do I need to take a roll call for adjournment? Kevin,
Kevin Baker, yes.
Gino,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and Lisa Flanagan, yes. All right, thank you.
Aye.
Thanks. Good night.